Welcome everyone to our session. Today we are going to be working with Wayne Lynn. Wayne has his own consulting company, Lynn Consulting, that he's had for a number of years. Fortunately for us, Wayne has a strong printing background. He's run a number of printing companies, been involved in a number of printing companies over the years. So he kind of speaks everyone's lingo and knows what it's like to deal with getting salespeople in the industry. Wayne and I had a little chat as we were talking about what might we do for the webinar today, and as we were talking about some of the issues that face printers today. Certainly hiring salespeople and making sure that the hires are good and that they're going to fit in is even more of a challenge than it's ever been, with having to sell so many different products, digital printing, wide format printing, all the other types of marketing, digital storefronts, everything else. All of the printers, our members that I talk to, are always having challenges, having to work on compensation programs and how best to organize their sales force. So what Wayne's going to talk about today is not necessarily how best to do that, but as you, as a business owner and manager, have decided how you want to have your sales operation set up, how do you go about bringing in people that are going to fit what you want, and making sure you know what you want so that you are able to hire the right people. We are going to be recording the session today, and I will be sending out the link probably on Monday with the session. So if you have other people in your organization that would like to watch it, more than happy to do that. There'll also be a link on our website, which is new in the members only portion of the section of the website. We do have a webinar tab in which we have all of our webinars listed in there, and this will also be available on the newsletter each week. So with that, we're going to be going about 30 minutes or so. A couple quick ground rules. Would ask that you mute your audio on your phone if you're in on your phone, or if you're watching through the computer. You mute your audio. We often have issues where people go on hold or things like that, and then there's music coming through and background distractions and that sort of thing. There's a chat box that's on the right-hand part of your screen. Please use that to ask any questions. You can ask questions at any time. I'll keep my eye on that and make sure that when you ask your question, we get that queued up. With that, Wayne, I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Thank you, John. Great introduction. Hello to everybody who has joined the webinar. As you know, my name is Wayne Lynn. I've been in the printing industry for over 40 years and run a number of companies. And telling John earlier, as I spent a lot of time recently thinking about, what's going on, what's happened in my career, and I was telling John that the most difficult problems that I've always faced in my working career has been people issues. And also, on the flip side of that coin, the best or greatest successes I've had have been when I had really good people who all got lined up in the same direction, and we achieved some remarkable things when that happened. The gist of what I'm going to be doing today is talking about the process of hiring salespeople. I'm going to start by talking about 4 or 5 things that kind of are in the background. They're the context of the process, and I bring them up and briefly speak about them because I think they're important to keep in our minds as we go through the process of hiring salespeople. First thing is, you see a slide in front of you. It's got a graphic. And to begin with, a shout out to the PGSF, which is the Printing and Graphics Scholarship Foundation, a division of the Printing Industries of America. The PGSF is headed up by John Bertelsen, used to be the CEO of Subtle Strauss, and in John's role at the PGSF, he is in charge of the effort of helping students in college who want to get into the printing industry with funding to help them pay for the education. And as I understand it, the GAA just made a contribution to that fund. So kudos there to the GAA. But the reason I chose this slide is because if you explore it, look at it and everything else, and you think about our history over the last couple decades, we have become a technology industry, and we don't often give ourselves credit for that. We tend to think that we're not as sexy as other industries, and just don't approach the marketplace looking for talent like we've got something exciting going on that people should really get enthusiastic about and want to be a part of. So just keep that in mind, and I urge you to approach the process of recruiting and hiring like you really get it, like you believe that we are a technology industry, and we're in the middle of a lot of things that are going on in this world in terms of change. The next thing that's important from a context perspective is to realize that currently the industry probably has more generational cohorts working in it than we've ever had. The oldest cohort is obviously the baby boomers. We've been around for a long time. Many of us have already retired, but there's quite a few of us still left. The Gen X group, which tends to be our children, it is smaller than any of the other cohorts that are currently in the industry. The millennials, Generation Y, tend to be our grandchildren, and they are also the largest cohort in the industry today. They are the largest since the boomers, obviously. Probably will become the largest cohort in the industry ever if you were to read some of the trending that people are talking about out there. And understanding how to market and recruit millennials is a very important topic of conversation in our industry today. The Gen Y is the young group. They are barely old enough at this point in time to be getting involved in the industry, but they're out there and they're on the way. One thing I should probably say here is that when we look at these generations and we think about recruiting and hiring them, one thing that most people don't realize is that behaviorally, we're all the same. There are differences in these generations relative to values, what we grew up with. Millennials and Gen Xers tend to be much more technology fluent than the older people in the industry. And they grew up with a different lifestyle, but behaviorally, in terms of looking for people that fit particular jobs, they're just like the rest of us. The older people have been around for a while. So don't be intimidated by that. Don't be turned off. Don't throw up your hands in frustration and not move forward, because you can deal with millennials. Not hard. Next thing I want to talk about, this is a quote by Jack Welch. Jack Welch is considered the greatest CEO business person of the 20th century. And he made a statement at one point about all the great strategies and technologies and all that stuff just don't go anywhere without great people. And, I think, from the perspective of Lynn Consulting, we believe that helping people realize their potential is probably the greatest investment available to businesses in today's environment. We think that the impact on business performance is greater than, you can buy all the technology, you can come up with great strategies, business models, and everything else. But again, without those great people, they aren't born that way. People learn to behave in the way that they behave as they grow up and mature. And it's those decisions that were formed during that growing process that determine the behavior that they have today. I won't get into that. That's at the heart of the Harrison assessment system, and we won't have enough time to cover that in great detail today. But again, it's about the people. The next thing, you see a slide there that it's a curve. If you look at the curve, you look at the left-hand side, it starts way down on the bottom left. It comes up, sharply turns, levels out, goes across the middle of the page over to the right, and toward the right side of the page, it turns up again and rapidly goes up. This is called a power curve. And if maybe to illustrate the point of what this is trying to tell us, if you look at that middle section of the curve that's pretty flat right there in the middle, and think about all the people in your company, 60% of those people are somewhere on that middle section of the curve in terms of performance and talent. If you look at that left-hand side, which is about a quintile, over there where it's turning down to the left, that's the bottom 20%. If you look at the right-hand side where it starts to turn up and then goes up, that's the top quintile, the top 20% of the people in your company. And you see that curve ramps up pretty fast. That's illustrative of the fact that human performance, human ability, talent, and so forth is one of those things that is not as level and as evenly distributed as one might think. Just to illustrate the point a little bit, ask yourself these questions. About, do you find that a small percentage of your people create more and better results? Do they generate a disproportionate share of the work? To drive home the point of today's discussion, if you look at your sales force, especially if it's more than just a handful of people, look at your people in that sales force, and it's not uncommon. I've seen hundreds of companies, both working in them, running in them, and consulting with them, and you look at it and you take the top 20% of that sales force, and it's common to find that that top 20% generates 80 to 90% of your sales. That's an illustration of what the power curve is. And also the point here is, I want you to realize that there is a way, when you go out, start looking, recruiting, hiring salespeople, there's a way to find that top 20%. And that top 20%, especially as they get up toward the top of that curve, are far more productive and far more likely to succeed. So, moving on here. Last thing I want to talk about in terms of context is fairly simple, and it's this: that the mistakes, and everybody is ever hired a salesperson or anybody else that has a significant job in your company knows this. But mistakes in hiring salespeople are the most costly people mistakes of all. It's not unusual for a bad hire in sales to cost up to 5 times their annual salary. Non-productive people who aren't effective as salespeople in the marketplace create negative perceptions. As long as a mistake, bad hire in sales is on your payroll, you're losing time in terms of developing new business. It has an impact on your internal morale. In my experience, one of the things that most significantly impacts morale in a company in a negative way is either a non-productive, non-effective sales force, or just individuals within that sales force who aren't getting the job done. And people look at that, and again, in my experience, there's a lot of resentment, and it does cause problems in terms of people not performing at the level that they're capable of performing. I want to move down. As I said, that was, we're talking about context here. I wanted to, we're beyond that. I want to talk about the process that we use, which is why we're talking today. In the what we call referred to as the high probability hiring process, there are a number of things that we focus on. The first one is, what are the decision criteria? What is it specifically that we are looking for as we start the process, which I'll talk about in a minute. But as we, as we get into it and we start to work on hiring new salespeople, we have a conversation about what is it we're looking for. What's the individual need to demonstrate? What have they done in the past? How much experience do they have? And are they a good fit for the job? They may be very well qualified. The resume look wonderful. They may interview, very, very well, but they may not do the job because behaviorally they just aren't disposed to do it. They don't have the right combination of traits and tendencies to be effective salespeople. We're going to talk a little bit about the role of the Harrison technology. Harrison assessment technology is a leading behavioral assessment tool worldwide. It has the ability to take survey data and convert it into data that can be compared to a job template, which is in the Harrison system for the job that you're hiring for. And one particular report called the Job Success Analysis is the thing that pops up first in the process, which tells us how good a match the candidate is to, to the template that we're trying to hire against. Next thing is that there's a process that we follow. We have a structured interviewing plan, and I need to reinforce this. It is a process. It works. And some people have a great deal of difficulty trusting a process, but a process is there for a reason. It helps to guide the activity, and processes can be improved rather than just randomly shooting at the dartboard blindly. But anyway, that's that. I want to move now. The decision criteria, there are three parts. There's what we call eligibility, which is their qualifications, their experience, validity of the resume. If you don't know how to do this, we can work with you and help you on this, but there are techniques for looking at a resume that expose things that should be challenged and questioned. And we have a lot of experience doing that, but we stress that there's a lot of hidden data. It's very difficult for somebody putting a resume together to disguise something that they want to hide without literally lying about it. And there's ways of picking that up. So we work on that. And, we also spend a little bit of time trying to figure out, the performance levels of that candidate during the process of reviewing their eligibility. The suitability is the second decision criteria. It simply, is the candidate a good fit for the job? As I mentioned earlier, we use the job success analysis out of the Harrison system. The JSA is an acronym for job success analysis, but the JSA has three components: the essential traits, the desirable traits, traits to avoid. We look at each section of that. We look at the traits that are listed. We look at their scores. All of that is compiled and crunched together, and we get a percentage fit for the candidate. And we're using a template in the Harrison system called the Business Developer Specialist for most of our recruiting efforts and hiring efforts, helping clients today. It is the toughest standard for salespeople, but we choose that because we believe that, and John did a very good job of talking about it at the introduction, but we believe that today's selling environment is maybe the toughest that the industry has ever seen. And the business developer specialist template or profile addresses the traits and tendencies that are necessary to succeed. And just for your information, there are years and years of data in the system that have been compiled, and we know what the behavioral traits of highly successful people look like, and that's what we're trying to assess and measure against. The last component of decision criteria is the interview. And we can work with you and help you with that, because there are well-known and established ways to do a good, effective interview. Your purpose in an interview is to verify factual data. We will provide you with an interview guide that's based on the data from the applicant survey that yielded the job success analysis. We encourage you to use at least 3 people in the process internally. And, when we're done with the interviews, we'll structure a call. We'll compare notes. We'll get everybody's perspectives, diverse viewpoints on things, and make a decision. And that's the decision criteria. That's what we're trying to accomplish with our process. As far as the Harrison assessment technology is concerned, I just want to mention a couple things. It starts with an online questionnaire. The questionnaire takes 20 to 25 minutes to complete. And that's an amazing fact, by the way, considering how much information we get out of it. We use job-specific templates in the system. There are around 6,000 different jobs in the system that we can have someone do a survey and then compare their data against a template. I mean, pretty much anything you want to hire for, we can find a template that will fit and give us a reliable read on whether or not that individual is does fit well or match up against it. The Harrison measures 175 behavioral factors that include behavioral traits, tendencies, competencies, interest, working environment preferences, and very specifically traits to avoid for the particular job template that we're hiring against. All of the survey data, the Harrison over the years has evolved to the point where it has been validated against all the known standards for psychological testing instruments in the marketplace. It's not biased. It also does an internal consistency evaluation and calculates what we call the reliability score, which basically tells us whether or not the report that we're getting on that individual is, worth working with or not. If the reliability score is below 80%, we typically throw it out because there are just too many internal inconsistencies and the results are not reliable. There are 2 theories that the Harrison is based on. One is called the enjoyment performance theory, and the other one is paradox theory. There's a report that essentially gives you the summary of what both of those theories are about, and we use them once we've gotten to the finalist stage of the interview process. Moving on, process flowchart. It goes like this. If we get together and say, okay, we're looking for new salespeople, the first thing we're going to do is have a conversation about the eligibility criteria. Going to want to know, what you're looking for there. We'll construct part of the online survey to reflect your criteria. We'll have the candidate take the online survey. When that is complete, we'll have the data. We can download the data and run a couple of reports. We'll have an eligibility score in terms of how well qualified the individual is for the job, and we'll have a JSA score, which tells us how well suited the candidate is for the job. And another way of saying that is, are they behaviorally likely to do the job? That's what the Harrison technology, quite frankly, is all about. What are they behaviorally likely to do? Once we've got those two scores, we look at the combined score, typically set a threshold. For instance, if we started a process and we said we want to screen for candidates who have at least an 80 score on their eligibility criteria and an 85 on their JSA, the threshold score would be 165, and we would be selecting against that, looking for at least 3 people, 3 finalists to interview. Once we've selected those people, we run 3 additional reports for each one of them. We run what we call a traits and definitions report, which is an inventory of those 175 factors I was talking about, and we run the paradox graph report. Paradox graph is a predictor of unbalanced, disruptive behavior that, in extreme cases can be the reason that a person will not succeed in a particular job. We look for that. Once we've got that data, we take your interviewing team. You set up the interviews for each of the 3 candidates with 3 internal people. Those interviews are conducted. After that, we compare notes, make a decision, and make an offer. And that's the process. It's not that complicated. Probably more complicated than most hiring processes you might have used in the past. But this, I think, is a much more reliable process with much better odds of success. I just went too far. One last thing. The Harrison assessment technology is a tool that's used for recruiting for job fit, which is what we're talking about today. It's used to develop internal people in the organization that are already on your staff, and that you would like to help them go to the next level. The Harrison is suited for that. It takes coaching, which I have a certification to do, but it works. I could tell you about success stories I have in a number of clients right now where we've taken internal people and started working with them and have seen dramatic improvement. The third area is working with teams. All of you have teams in your organizations. They have varying degrees of functionality and success. There's a lot of reasons that teams don't succeed. Almost all of them are behavioral. We can identify those. We can work with people individually and as a group to overcome those things. And the last item, if you're a baby boomer or a Gen Xer, and you're thinking about your exit strategy and you aren't planning on selling the business, maybe you want to keep it in the family or something, you're going to need people to turn the business over to. It's called succession planning. We can help you identify who your best candidates for that are, help you identify their developmental needs that they might have, and work with them to develop their weak traits and tendencies so that when the time comes when you want to hand them the keys, they're ready. Folks, I know I moved fast. There's a lot of material to cover. But I think hopefully I've gotten the job done, and you've got an idea of what this is about, what the process is about, some notion in terms of why it works and how we reduce the odds of bad decisions in the process. John, I am at the point where if you've got some questions, I can take those on, and hopefully everybody who's listened in, number one, I appreciate that, but hopefully everybody who's listened in has gotten something from this afternoon.
So, Wayne, there is a question in the chat box. Do you see that, or you want me to read it? for you?
Let me see here.
Should be off to the right.
Yeah, I got it. Are you saying you recruit the candidates for sales folks? It's Jack. Jack, we do that. We are not recruiters. Having said that, I've done quite a bit of it. Primarily, when I do recruiting, I do it using LinkedIn. I don't go out making phone calls, using the standard recruiter methodology. I don't do that. I can do recruiting through LinkedIn. The recruiting is a separate subject. I can help you with that, but it's not our forte.
So, Wayne, a question that I have, one of the challenges, when you're looking at, a sales position is one of experience, and, you're looking at somebody that might not have a lot of experience and comparing against somebody that's got a lot of experience. And, there's sort of pros and cons of both of them. Sometimes people that have a lot of experience, that's great, but then they carry with them, certain baggage that they have from their careers, where if you get somebody that's newer that doesn't have a lot of experience, they may have the raw talent, but, it needs to be developed. So my question is how do you look at that when you're looking at a pool of people, and does the Harrison testing, and does your approach enable you to identify whether somebody that doesn't have a lot of experience is going to be matched and ultimately successful in a sales position, versus somebody that maybe has a lot more experience. So maybe you can talk a little bit to that dynamic.
Okay, that's a great question, John. The basic short answer to that question is that this is key to recruiting millennials into sales. And why I say that is that millennials won't come with a lot of the experience that you would like to see. But millennials, just like everybody else, there's a certain percentage of them that come with great matches to the JSA, the profile. And when you look at that, you look at the other experience that the millennial has. Does it look like things that are activities and experiences that are translatable into the sales arena? If you see that and you've got a good JSA score, it's worth an interview. Now, on the flip side of that, if you've got an individual who comes with a lot of experience, but who does not have a good JSA score, there's a two-part answer to that. The first part of it is people I've helped clients hire who had the right kind of experience but not a good JSA score, have a hard time succeeding. And oftentimes when at the end of the day, you find out that's why they were interested in changing jobs anyway, because of the fact that they weren't succeeding and the sheriff was on the edge of town, so to speak. But having said that, there are some clients I have who, after looking at what the JSA and the other Harrison reports told me, and after talking to the owner, the CEO of that company, we looked at it and we said, this guy has a lot of the right kind of experience. There are only a couple of things, in their Harrison reports that are really in their way. And every one of the traits and tendencies and so forth that the Harrison measures can be developed. There's not a one that can't be developed. It takes a lot of dialogue. It takes coaching. It takes people who are willing to put in the work. But it's just, in many respects, John, it is essentially helping a person change a bad habit and replace it with a good habit. That's what the coaching aspect of the Harrison technology is about. So, I've seen situations and had success with people who had JSA scores in the 70s, which I don't encourage people to hire an individual who's not on the payroll, that's applying for a job and their JSA is that low. I don't encourage them to hire that person. Sometimes they don't listen, they do it anyway. And I don't know of a situation that hasn't failed, just to be truthful about it. But, I've seen candidates who had really good experience with a JSA score of somewhere above 75, but not in the 80s. And they had a weak assertive trait. And, and one of their communication paradox traits was weak. And maybe their self-acceptance trait score was low. Those are all improvable. And we made the decision to work with them and at the end of the day, saw a 10% improvement in their JSA over a 2 to 3 year period of time, and a lot more success than would have been predicted when we started. Long-winded answer, but that's how I see that.
Other questions that people have? Wayne, I have one more. Maybe you can back up to the screen it's got your contact information on it.
Yeah.
Just so people have that. I will be sending out your contact information with the link to the recording, but also, I did send out your resume, which has your contact information on it as well. So my question is if people follow this process, what do you find the success rate to be in terms of bringing on people that end up, being successful and staying with the organization?
It's pretty high. If it doesn't work out, which that does happen, nothing's perfect. If it doesn't work out, it's usually for reasons of extenuating circumstances that the process and the Harrison couldn't have captured anyway. But again, every time we have gone looking for sales candidates for clients, if the JSA score was 80 and up, the percentage success rate was almost 100%. If you got up into the high 80s, and occasionally I see one even in the low 90s, but up into the high 80s, it's very likely that candidate is going to be successful because they are just behaviorally prone to do the things that lead to success in sales.
All right, great. Any other last questions before we sign off? All right, well, Wayne, thank you very much for doing the webinar for us today. And I will be sending this out probably Monday, so to everybody, all my contacts. If you have any other questions, you can certainly email me as well, John at jbsolutionsllc.com. But thanks for the attendance today, and Wayne, again, thank you for doing the presentation.
Well, thank you, John, and thanks to everybody who attended.
All right.
Okay. Bye-bye.